What's up, guys? It's Zachy J, and today we're going to be talking about the mind, the body, and the breath. Guess what? The mind, the body, and the breath. It's all the same. It's all the same, just different parts of the same system, different sides of the same coin, the same shape. And why is it useful to understand the connectiveness of these dynamics? It's because the closer you get to understanding the connectiveness of these dynamics, the more useful they are about informing one another about how they actually work in your real-time life. You can notice how your breath is not only helping inform you about the state of which you're in, but is also helping to create the state of which you're in, whether that is in the mind or it is in the body, right? There's so much dynamics with the breath that give you direct control over your body and your mind that it might as well be the same thing if you are consciously aware of it and if you should choose to dive into it, right? Andrew Huberman talks about a method of instantly calming yourself down, which is quite helpful, where you take this full breath into your lungs and then at the top you take a little bit more. And then you can help release that, right? And there are these techniques that are used to calm people down in high stress environments. And it's like you don't only have to use them in high stress environments. Maybe you just want a state change. Maybe you just want a mind change. Maybe you just want to focus, right? To reorientate onto something else. And instead of waiting for your body to calm down naturally and waiting for your mind to hopefully release its pit bull-like grip on whatever it is that it's grappling with, you can just slide some breath right on through. You know what I mean? Grease those wheels up a bit. Get them moving smoothly. You can do that. And it's the same thing that the Huberman talks about for this big intake of breath, followed by that a little bit more at the top. We've been doing this with breathwork for a long time with, if you have been hyperventilating, for instance, a very common tactic that people will probably have experienced if you've hyperventilated enough times in your life, which is something I have because I had asthma growing up. Lucky me. So I got to learn these breathwork techniques at an early age. I get to realize there's a little bit more of a connection than normal, right? And that connection, in this instance, to calm down, was breathing through a brown paper bag and reintroducing CO2 into your system. The CO2 is the thing that's calming you down, allowing you to have smooth body and brain functioning. So it's all connected, okay? We already know the mind and the body are connected to the degree that what the body feels, the mind's gonna feel. What the mind's going through, the body's feeling. And we have this other saying that we talk about in the dance world. At least maybe it's not universally regarded in the dance world, but at least it came from my dance teachers, so might as well share a bit of it. And that is, form follows function, right? And the function follows the form. So we have to understand this concept too, because it's a little bit more engineering based. Tag in your engineering brain for this part, because your body has a function, right? And the functions that you're carrying out in a normal day-to-day, like the movement patterns, right? The holding patterns of emotions, the working patterns for how you are operating in this life. All those things, that's the function. And the form is going to represent that too. And same thing with your mind, the state of your mind, the holding patterns of your mind, the emotional holding patterns of your mind, the habitual thought patterns, the inner monologue. And how are you inner monologuing today? All that is reinforcing neural wiring. And then what happens? The function follows the form and the form follows the function. And this is just highlighting how the connectiveness of all these systems and the through line between them, which gives you so much control over both of them mechanistically, is your breath. So what are you going to do with your breath? How are you going to show up today? Are you going to even notice that you can tune in to what's going on the inside of you? You can actually start to control more or less what's going on the outside of you too. And why is this important? This is so important because if you're living life, odds are it's not always perfect. Okay? Odds are sometimes it's difficult. And some days, some weeks might be way more difficult than the other weeks. And depending on our self-soothing patterns, our ability to manage our stress, to navigate these complications of adult life, whether it's relationships, work, money, is it friends? Sometimes you see existential crises too. Like, what are you going to do? And we have to figure out how we're going to handle these things. And when you have invested into your breath, the way that you show up to handle these things creates less friction. It means that you're not wildly oscillating between the extremes. And some people are living pretty nice lives, and hopefully you're grateful for that. And maybe breath work is not as important to you. But if you've ever gone through extremenesses, the extremes that life can throw at you, breathwork is critical. They give it to Navy SEALs for a reason, right? These guys are doing some of the most stressful things out there. Special forces people are doing the most stressful stuff out there. They're going in there and they're seeing horrible things, and they have to do things, and it is what it is, right? And what do they get as a way of managing what they're going through? They get breath work. They get box breathing, right? Box breathing is great. So we have to understand how to use these things for ourselves too. We need to understand that we can not have to wait for a crisis in order to learn this stuff, but we should learn it so in the advent of a crisis, we can actually show up for ourselves and advocate for ourselves, which is the hardest thing to do because, if you're melting from emotions, the last thing you want to do is be disciplined and be you know what, let me take some structured breathing, That's easier said than done. And that's why it's a practice, because it's the technique. And you got to practice some of these techniques. So when you are met with stressful events, you can show up with the training that you've done, because you're not going to show up perfect, okay? If you've ever done martial arts before, you know this. You show up with your training. You show up with what you've been practicing. You don't show up with Bruce Lee if you watched him on television. You don't show up, or one of the UFC champions. You don't show up like them if you just watched them. You can only show up like them if you've actually trained like them, So we have to train in such a way with our breath that we can connect our body and our mind. And then we can start controlling the energy that's flowing through our system. We don't have to let that energy control us. And we let that happen by when we are hitting our extremes, by bringing ourselves down, not only just to baseline, but to fulfillment, to happiness, back to a state of potentially even bliss, right? How far can you go with this breath work? You might not even know the answer. You might not even know that even in a crisis, you can source bliss. Even a second of it. Even a second of it can reveal for you that there is more than what is right in front of you, okay? You take a breath, it calms you down, and for a second it gives you peace and clarity, and that might be everything you need to pull out of a nosedive from going into. Usually what happens is people get sad and then they get sadder, and it's easy to get sad and then get sadder. So in order to pull up from that nosedive, you need tools that help you. And when we're adults, we're the ones learning the least amount of self-soothing techniques, because it was expected that, okay, now you're mature enough, you don't need them anymore, right? You don't need the self-soothing techniques anymore, but guess what? We still do. And luckily, we come built in with them. We come built in with breath and a brain that can tap into it, and a body that can experience it, and you put the whole system together. Now you have fine-tuned controls on how you can take yourself from beautiful places in life and completely enjoy them, to take yourself from working positions where you're building yourself up and make yourself healthier, and to take you from crisis too and make it so that you're so much more grounded and capable of seeing the light from at the end of the tunnel. And even better, you're capable of making that quantum leap to actually being in the light, right? Not only just staying in the tunnel and being like, I see it over there in the distance. No, you'll be able to shortcut that. The half-life, you'll get better and better and better until before you know it, the oscillating life, as life kind of sends energy through you and it might feel like you're bouncing around, it starts to become more and more stable. And it might just be because you are becoming more stable. You are more like a grounded, unmovable object that is flowing and working with the universe, and instead of just at its whims, just being pushed around. And it doesn't mean that the ability for the universe to push you around, it still might challenge you a little bit, and that's fine. It's fine to be challenged, but you know you're up for it because it can't shake you from your inner core, okay? It might be able to move you from your outer core, whoa, crazy, right? But not from your inner core, because your inner core is so solid. And it's time for us to build these solid inner cores. And that's why you have to see the system as fully integrated and one. You have to see the system of the mind, the body, and the breath as one unit. This is critical for your development into the highest versions of yourself, okay? The better version of yourself understands how to use tools. These are tools. Pick them up, use them, get better as a result, okay? Dude, thank you all so much for tuning in. If you stayed to the end of this video, you're a beast. You're awesome. Do me a favor, give me a like, a subscribe, and even share this with a friend that needs to hear some of this stuff too. And guess what? We're all sharing this consciousness together, so let's make this a better place, okay? Have a great rest of your day, and I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.